This video is brought to you by Freddy Fish 2, The Case of the Haunted Schoolhouse.
I dive into the gentle sea to free the dolphin inside of me.
Well, here we are, folks. The day that I have been dreading for so long has finally arrived. This is the big one, an incident that is so utterly bonkers that it almost defies the act of commentary or analysis. It's just like one of my Japanese animes. After literal years of making callous references to this infamous episode in my other reviews, we have finally arrived at this dark encounter itself. So I hope you brought a poncho because we're sitting right in the splash zone. Ugh.
Hold on to Duke's fin! Let him take you!
Yes, this is the episode where Hank Hill gets sexually assaulted by famous celebrity Duke the Dolphin, in which he is held underwater, grabbed by his Hank Ussy, and left twisting and gasping for air, all while Bobby is busy posing hard like a JoJo motherfucker with those goddamn flamingos. Now, this would already be an absolutely insane thing to put your TV protagonist through, as it's both freaky as fuck and bafflingly weird, but they actually doubled down on the unpleasantness by also giving Luann her own story of being harassed and molested by lewd golfers. Yay! Ugh.
Shoulders back. Now flex those knees and bend your waist.
Ugh, god damn, this show loves giving Billy West dickhead characters to voice. First he got to be Mr. Holloway, and now he's the head rapist? What the fuck is going on? I don't want to see the red M&M grabbing all that ass. That's horrible. Leave her alone, you monster. Oh god, it is terrible, awful, one of the most unflinchingly realistic depictions of sexual predation in any animated series out there, and you know what? I'm glad it's here. I'm glad that they had the guts to juxtapose the dolphin shit with this brutally terrible experience for Luann, because it so effectively sucks out any feeling that the show is laughing at the subject of sexual assault. So even if you do happen to find the dolphin stuff amusing on some level, being forced to see Luann get groped really brings home what exactly you're finding funny with Duke, you fucking pervert, which is quite the bold move for the writers to make, as they very easily could have sidestepped those unpleasant feelings entirely by instead giving us an unrelated side story to help distract us from the seriousness of what we saw Hank endure. I suppose they figured that trying to give us a non sequitur B-plot of like Bill trying to paint his house or Dale looking for leprechaun gold or some bullshit like that really would have diminished the serious conversation that the A-plot was having. So I guess if we're gonna bring up the nasty topic of sexual assault at all, you might as well dig in your heels and make the whole episode about it, as anybody who can't handle such a discussion isn't gonna power through just because Boomhauer is having problems with like a bully at an arcade or something stupid and trite like that. However, this topic isn't thrown on our faces from the word go, and thank God for that. What a wise decision that was, because this really is something that you need to ease people into. The first half of the episode is all about setting up the chessboard, making it clear that Luann is mooching too much off of Uncle Hank and that he needs to help her find an actual job ASAP, otherwise she's just gonna keep asking him for that sweet, sweet propane money.
Here's $60. Now, I lived for a month on $60 thanks to
Hey guys, I got $60!
My goodness, what a great vocal performance Brittany Murphy was putting in here. This could practically serve as like a demo tape for the vast range of emotions that she was able to pitch out, from how she maniacally cackles about how she has $60 to sobbing uncontrollably to even being adorably saucy with a very rare innuendo.
Look at your face, you thought it was a big box, but it's a small box. But you know what they say about small packages.
I never knew that I needed Luann to make a package joke, but here it is, and how cute is it coming from her, my goodness.
What a handsome container. There's an old Ferengi expression. Good things come in small packages.
As easy as it would be to just focus on all the dolphin shit and make that the center of our discussion, I do think it's critical and very important that we emphasize and recognize how much of this episode is carried on Luann's back, as she is the one who's bringing such vividness and life to the story, an emotional overtone that couldn't have been filled by anybody else. It really is her soul that's on the line here, where she is now looking to how her Uncle Hank handles his incident and uses that as a guideline for how she should respond to a similar problem, meaning that she's either going to learn to stick up for herself and take no shit, or she's going to take the route of least resistance and just put up with the harassment.
Luann, you and I have a secret that we must take to our graves.
Are you threatening to kill me, Uncle Hank?
I wish.
This is the first real Hank and Luann story that we've seen since the Manger Babies episode, and this one is having a much more important conversation that would benefit people of all ages, and not just pastors with a weird obsession about spilling juice on his new carpet. This episode, Return to La Grunta, is making the point that when somebody does something bad to you, be that giving you golf lessons against your consent or trying to fuck you while you're drowning, it's important not to let shame or personal discomfort keep you from speaking up. But that said, it is also easy to understand why Hank Hill, of all people, wouldn't want the public to see the recording of what happened to him, as he's terrified of being mocked by his friends, or God forbid becoming a public figure on the news. Ugh. The man got put into an utterly ridiculous situation that barely even sounds real, so it's sexual discomfort on top of a ludicrous and compromising thing that feels like it's the setup to like an off-color joke, and so we, the audience, are naturally sympathetic to why Hank wouldn't want to make a big mess about something like this. But Luann, who's been watching all of this happen to Hank, then picks up the lesson that you shouldn't talk about things that are this uncomfortable, and then she applies that lesson to her problem with the golfers, and in a way that even Hank himself finds dismaying.
Some of the men on the golf course got fresh with me. It was more physical.
Did you report him?
I shouldn't have taken the putt in the first place. That was unprofessional.
Luann, that's crazy.
Well, you didn't tell anyone when you...
Luann, please?
You see, it's better to just put these things behind you.
This is actually a shockingly clever way to talk about sexual violence and really dig into why people don't speak up about their experiences, as the Dolphin stuff is embarrassing in a more surreal and broadly understandable way, meaning that pretty much everyone out there can get why Hank would want to keep such a weird thing a secret, but then the story gives us a super smart twist by draping that same sense of shame over what Luann goes through, painting us an unmistakable parallel and parable about how you shouldn't keep this stuff inside, even if it is personally distressing and other people might laugh at you, since talking about it will prevent future incidents from happening, and as we see with Bill, talking about it can actually help other people open up about their experiences as well. But the story doesn't feel like it's outright lecturing us on the topic or putting up a blaring neon sign about the lesson we're supposed to take away from these events, because again, Luann is such a lovable person and a great lead for this story and a beacon of both humor and steadfast strength that she takes the temperature down enough to keep things feeling very light and not too miserable to enjoy.
My own money. Nobody making me beg for every little penny like a dog.
Yep, you'd show me all right.
It is her unique zest for life that makes this whole episode really sing, and in a style that makes me so glad whenever they allow her and Uncle Hank to lead a story together. Had her role instead been inhabited by like Peggy or someone like Mr. Strickland, who maybe gave Hank like a trip to La Grunta as part of like a tax write-off or something similar, then it wouldn't have had the same kind of delightful wow factor that only Luann can bring to a story when she's being so enthusiastic about a project like this. She really is the handful of sugar that makes the fishy taste of dolphin phallus. I am not going to say dolphin dick on YouTube, no matter how tempting the alliteration is, go down smooth. For you see, when Hank gets her this job as a golf course drink girl, she goes out of her way to buy him a gift, and not just any old normal gift, but something that, in her words, will get a big reaction out of Hank.
I have to get him something he really loves. Something that'll just make him go, wow!
Oh yeah, cause that's totally the sound that Hank makes when he's really happy about stuff, for sure. You know, this whole first half of the story is some really easy watching, so comfy and cozy that it's effortless to get lost in stuff like Hank being at the hardware store, where we get a whole bunch of nameless guys that Hank is apparently acquaintances with, and who really only exist so that one of them can offer up the golf course drink girl position and introduce that job into the plot. But these fellows don't feel at all contrived or unnatural to the series, and even if they did a little bit, I wouldn't blame the show too much for resorting to this strategy, as this whole thing does depend on getting Luann to La Grunta as quickly as they can, so giving her this word-of-mouth recommendation does serve that purpose just fine. And really, it's just nice to see Hank talking to people that aren't just the usual like main character group, since he is somebody who is glad, happy even, to collaborate and talk with people who share the same interests as him. This small touch is really cool, and I do think it adds a lot to Hank's sense of place within Arlen as a community, being that he's someone who's an actual known factor around town by craftsmen and sports hobbyists and dolphin fuckers like his instructor.
Why must you speak through guys like him? Why is it never me?
Yep, oh my god, as if we didn't have enough to contend with already, the guy who oversees Duke's encounters seems to hold a very special interest in Dolphin specifically, which is why you really gotta be careful hiring men to do certain jobs. Mortuary assistant? Definite necrophile. Mechanics? They're all trying to get some muffler action anyway, and the less said about dentists, the better. Ugh. This is why porn stars and OnlyFans creators are the only honest people around, because everybody else is trying to hide the fact that they're secretly attracted to whatever the hell they're working with, which must mean that I really want to fuck Hank Hill, so get the hell out of here, Duke. I seen those deflated cheeks first.
Here comes the fondue.
No, it doesn't.
I can't wait to see this video again when I die, and when it's being used as evidence for why I deserve to go to hell, fuck. But if I'm going, then I'm taking that Dolphin guy with me, and that Grunta director dude, who not only tried to hush this whole incident away, but he even has the gall, the bald-faced gall to victim blame Hank for causing the assault to happen. What the fuck are you talking about?
Mr. Hill, Duke has the same desires we all do, with all of your fondling. Duke became aroused and was attempting to become physically intimate with you.
Oh my god.
It's a compliment, really.
It's a compliment, really.
Ugh, yuck. Ah, man, is that whole exchange so creepy and uncomfortable to watch, and honestly super sad how Hank just quickly takes that cheap-ass bribe and scuttles away, because you know all that stuff is just a bunch of meaningless crap from the gift shop that he gets for staying quiet. It means nothing! Actually, this is a brilliant way of bringing the incident home with Hank, where now mementos of his rapist are sprinkled all throughout his goddamn house, reminding him each time he sees one of them how low the price of his silence was. I mean, Duke's face is on Bobby's shirt, for God's sakes. How are you supposed to put this whole thing behind you when he's literally looking up from your kid's chest, man? For as much as Hank would love to forget about this whole thing, he is sadly unable to do so, and his trauma even starts to affect his sexy times with Peggy, where they are once again trying to make a baby, and it seems like Peggy has picked up some of the breeding techniques that Hank was using on Ladybird, and don't take that out of context, because that actually came out worse than I meant it. Ugh.
Well, you can have it your way, Mr. Egg. We can wait just as long as you. You're not dealing with a couple of hormone-crazed teenagers here. Come on!
You know, if there's one person you really don't want being sexually frustrated, it's Peggy Hill. That woman is going to start punching holes in the wall before long, so let's all thank Hank for weathering that particular whirlwind for years on end. But not this time, baby, because when Pegleg approaches him with amorous intent, the squeaking of the bed reminds him of Duke squealing, his excited squealing, causing a horrified Hank to recoil in terror from his own wife.
Oh, yeah.
You know what they say about small packages.
Look, as much as we can try to make our dumb little jokes to dampen our discomfort with the subject matter, it is undeniably sad that Hankleton is unable to be intimate with Peggy because he's having these awful flashbacks that are killing his boner, his narrow boner. Like, how many times am I gonna have to see this man freak out in his own damn marriage bed? First, he was being triggered by Peggy's nail polish, reminding him of the Kane Skredeberg paintball massacre, and now he can't even enjoy sex? Move over, Guts from Berserk. Your life is child's play compared to the burden, the heavy burden that Hank has to carry. In fact, it isn't even just sex that's been ruined for Old Top, oh, I guess now he should be called Old Bottom, as we see that his most treasured activity, fishin', has been similarly tarnished by his experience with Duke, as when he catches the most well-animated catfish in TV history, he is unable to tolerate its presence on his crotch. What a weirdo!
Get it off!
God, no, Hank, I'm so sorry. This shit is ruining your already drab life, sucking the meager pleasures out of your hillbilly existence, rendering you unable to connect with your friends because of your intense discomfort and embarrassment with what happened, even though it wasn't your fault. However, when Luann starts draping herself in Peggy's frumpy clothes and Hank refuses Bobby's simple request of having an endless supply of capers for him, Peggy realizes that something's afoot and asks her hubby point blank what's going on. And instead of dodging the issue, Hank surprisingly closes the kitchen's pocket doors to get some privacy, which is very nostalgic for me because I also grew up in a house that had those, and he decides to pour out his heart to Peggy about what really happened.
Remember the movie on Lifetime? You know, what Gregory Harrison did to Valerie Bertinelli?
Oh, my God.
Now, there were a lot of ways that they could have had Peggy respond to this weird news, either by being dismissive or perhaps overly concerned for Hank's well-being, and either one would have felt acceptable, you know, not too surprising for either the tone of the show or Peggy's character itself, but instead they went for a surprising third option that is just, so perfectly Peggy, oh my God.
He is a mammal and would have mammalian organs, roughly in proportion to body size, I'm guessing?
That's enough talking about it for now.
This is all so disorienting. It's hard not to... I mean, did he know where to go?
Oh, Jesus Christ, Peggy, what the fuck? You are such an inappropriately inquisitive soul. What on earth could have motivated you to ask Hank Hill, of all people, whether the dolphin that tried to fuck him knew where to stick his giant Duke dick? Ugh. You are truly the only real scientific mind on the show, displaying the same kind of cold indifference that caused the U.S. to ask Japan's Unit 731 to share information that they gathered from their crimes against humanity. She also isn't willing to give back her perfectly suited slippers, saying that making such a meaningless gesture isn't going to take back what happened, which is the utter epitome of her inhuman greed. Man, you know a review has really gone off the rails when I start breaking out the word epitome and Unit 731 of all things. This episode, look, is just one mad twist after mad twist, which makes me go insane, and it's putting the audience through the most surreal visuals and lines ever, so I don't, blame us for being all, fucked up and just sort of unable to talk about this thing without going into weird areas. In fact, in the most shocking twist of all, when Hank's horrible secret is eventually revealed to the guys, and they proceed to point and laugh at him as expected, as Hank feared, except one of those laughs quietly turns to sobs. This is when we learn that Bill has endured the same damn experience and that he also took a bribe from the Grunta people, and that bribe turned out to be his iconic white tank top itself, meaning that he owes much of his look, his identity, to yet another chapter of misery in the tear-soaked book that we call his life.
It happened to me. The same thing happened to me 6 years ago. And 4 years ago. And 4 years ago.
What?
I can't even begin to express how mind-crushingly sad it is that poor foolish Bill thought it was a good idea to go back to La Grunta and try again. Like he really thought that maybe things would be better the second time, that perhaps he just caught Duke on a bad day, but nope, it happened to him again. Even when equipped with the foreknowledge that getting humped on was a distinct possibility and that he probably knew what not to do, it happened to him again. That's crazy, man. Actually, hold up a second, editor's note here. I just realized that Bill was technically present when Dale teased Hank about going to the dolphin encounter thing, which means that Bill was aware of what Duke was probably going to do to his longtime friend, but he chose to remain silent and just let him go off happily to La Grunta's island of lost sex toys anyway. Oh, what a retroactively awful thing to consider. My God, I see you, Dotreve. I see you laughing at Hank, laughing at the pain that was certain to rain down on your supposed friend's head. You are such a terrible person this season. I can't believe it.
Looks like you're going golfing.
Yeah, looks like.
Didn't know dolphins knew how to play golf.
Shut up, Dale.
This is not only extremely depressing for Bill, but also demonstrates that even if La Grunta cautioned the public against what Duke is capable of and says, hey, don't do this one thing because something might happen, the probability of him acting out is so damn high that it becomes a downright inevitability even if you know what not to do. So this isn't even a matter of them choosing not to disclose the potentially dangerous nature of Duke's discrepancies, where they say hey, you gotta avoid touching his oh-so-sensitive belly, but it's also the fact that they're hiding that anybody who goes into this encounter with him is likely going to walk away with more than what they bargained for. This is a case where Bill, once again, serves as a cautionary tale for the rest of the gang, where he was bought off years back and has kept it as a shameful secret all this time, leaving him feeling, in the man's own words, cheap and used. Not that any of that is necessarily a big deal-breaking problem for Bobby, who has really come to fall in love with his precious capers, putting that shit on just about anything, well, except for fruit pies.
Honey, did you try the capers with your fruit pies yet?
That was a real disappointment. I'd rather not talk about it.
This is a sentiment that I relate to heavy. The sucking disappointment of having high hopes for something that not only didn't pan out, but which causes the memory of your own enthusiasm to turn bitter in your mouth, or in the case of the capers, real briny. And on the topic of Bobby, I couldn't live with myself if I didn't give a special nod to his reaction to hearing Luann's confession about the golfers.
Some of the men on the golf course got fresh with me.
Did they use any swear words?
No, it was more physical.
Now I'm not so sure I want to be a golf course drink girl.
God damn it, you see, this is what happens when you scare the youth away with all your cussing and ass grabbing. We could have had Bobby be a golf course drink girl in the new seasons, instead of being just a restaurant guy, and if that doesn't teach you that sexual assault is wrong I say, then I don't know what will. Although, perhaps it is better that he didn't decide to be a drink girl after all, as it's already a cutthroat world even without all the molestation, as we see demonstrated by Luann's very unintentional burn on poor B. Arthur over there.
They think 'cause I'm a woman, I'm supposed to be Miss Mary Sunshine. Well, the hell with that.
I had no idea you were a woman.
Oof, man, that stings real bad. That is an epic insult that's made all the more potent for its accidental status. It's stuff like that which really serves as a soothing balm to this scorching hot and nasty Dolphin topic, where that whole thing is buried under all of these very likable and super cute moments. One of which I especially enjoy is when Hank is forced to go to his Dolphin orientation instead of just hanging out with the fam.
It's time for your dolphin encounter orientation.
Boy, look at that beef. I never get brunch.
The poor guy just wanted some brunch, and you rape him. Luann spent all of her money bypassing boring-ass golf to get her uncle a beautiful gift, and you rape him. How are you gonna live with yourself, Duke? How are you going to look yourself in the mirror, even if you do live in a beautifully elegant underwater wonderland? Seriously, before things start to go horribly wrong, Hank actually swimming with Duke is the dictionary definition of the word ethereal, with like harp music or something playing behind it all, music that continues playing even when things start to take a turn for the worse. This is just one of those sights that you will never forget once you've seen it, something that is both unsettlingly real and too absurd to take seriously. But once Hank realizes that Bill also went through this whole thing, he decides to take back all the cheap crap they bought him off with, throwing it back in their face, even though he has no legal recourse to do anything else. Well, that is until he realizes that he can kill two big birds with one giant rock. Because once he sees Luann being harassed yet again, Hank throws caution to the wind and chucks King Douche Nozzle into the encounter with Duke, giving him a taste of his own very salty medicine. And I think that this answer is actually quite an elegant one, bringing both storylines to a very satisfying conclusion, as Duke's crimes can no longer be concealed from the public and the golfer guy totally drowns. You know, I actually do want to make the bummer point of saying that our satisfaction at seeing a sexual predator like this get assaulted himself means that, within a certain context and under very specific circumstances, rape becomes acceptable and even a desirable punishment, which is pretty fucked up when you look at this whole thing from a more objective standpoint. Anybody who has ever said some variation of like, heh, enjoy prison, guy, they're gonna love you in there, has taken a certain glee in the concept of ass assault, and that really doesn't reflect well on us as a society. That's just a few steps away from the government hiring like its own state-sponsored rapist, sort of like an executioner, whose sole job is to inflict that particular punishment on select people.
Bobby, don't use the word rape. It's not polite.
I don't know, man. I just think that's something that we should all have to reflect on, because even though it may be narratively fulfilling to have this jerk get some form of ironic comeuppance, no pun intended, it is a pretty morally questionable thing to outright approve of or wish on other people, at least in my opinion. Regardless of whether it was wrong or right, Grunta itself is unable to shield Duke any longer, and we see that he is being returned to the sea. And I guess Hank and the Hills just decide to show up to this big goodbye event, which is no doubt happening a few days after he chucked the guy into the pool. I guess Hank is just showing up to really make sure that Duke is going. It is a surprisingly effective and dignified way of solving the Duke issue, where we are now left feeling like he and Grunta itself got some form of karmic punishment, in which this is now a solved situation. Of course, there is the argument that Hank would also be on the hook, legally speaking, for knowingly putting that golfer in such peril with Duke, but this is just one of those endings like Pygmalion where applying that sort of real-world consequence is beyond the scope of what the episode is trying to do. But you know what? I don't give a shit about any of that stuff anyway, as it's far more satisfying to see Duke's would-be lover reduced to tears and bowing his head in loss.
Let's all wish Duke good luck as he begins his return to the ocean. Goodbye, Duke.
Goodbye. So long, little buddy.
That guy is gonna need some major therapy, especially when he learns that Hank secretly paid for Duke's truck to be diverted to Mexico itself, where they launched him straight to the moon, just like they did with Wilsniak in South Park. You've heard of a clean burning hell, but Duke is currently experiencing the ultimate sterile environment and the one place that hasn't been corrupted by capitalism: space.
Mr. Big is pleased.
So there you have it, folks. Duke is dead, the golfer guy drowned, and Peggy was informed that dolphin dicks can become as long as your arm and have this horrible hook on the end, meaning that if they do know where to go, it ain't coming out. This episode is by far the boldest that they ever did, and it's really the kind of thing that should have gotten laughed out of the writer's room when they started to pitch it. Maybe Family Guy or Aqua Teen Hunger Force would have done this sort of thing as like a brief gag, a lewd cutaway segment that is done in extremely poor taste, but King of the Hill went one step beyond and made it a huge focus, the main focus of a whole episode. And yet, whenever I've watched this thing, I have never felt like the dolphin shit was done just for shock value, or that it's putting Hank through all of this solely so we can see him suffer. It's not like the time when Homer Simpson was raped by a panda, where that was supposed to be an overt joke and the show wanted you to laugh at how icky it is. By contrast, this episode is not asking us to laugh at Hank's experience, it is creating a baffling situation that it then spends the rest of its time trying to figure out how to set things right, instead of just relishing in how they're doing something really gross that people aren't gonna like. Hoo-hoo-hoo. It is an undeniably bad situation, a bad thing that happened to Hank, which then leaves him to decide how to deal with the aftermath, and it's that method of reacting to it that then causes a ripple effect to other people like Luann. There were so many ways that this type of story could have gone disastrously wrong, and I think they handled it in the best possible way that they could have. Now, would I still understand if people wanted to skip this episode entirely or find the baseline concept itself too distressing to engage with? Sure, I would totally understand that. I completely sympathize, and I do think that people should moderate the content they consume, and if you're gonna get more pain than enjoyment out of a frickin' TV show, then it is best to just skip it, but for those who do feel up to the task of taking this thing on, then I do believe that you'll walk away feeling surprisingly good. That said, this is still not an episode that I'd want to just huck at somebody who hasn't seen at least a season of King of the Hill, not unless I'm being like a dick and I want to intentionally freak them out and go like, oh, look at this weird shit. But even then, if I wanted to do something like that, I would just break out the substance and really give them a taste of something super strange.
Pretty girls should always smile. Feathers, feathers, feathers.
So for being one of the most unique episodes of the series, I give this whole traumatizing mess 2 big thumbs up. Although, I suspect that this story is far from over for Hank, because in the next episode, he decides to go to the sea itself and finish the job on Duke with his own 2 hands, all under the guise of taking his mom and her friends to Port Aransas.
To the miniatures.
To the miniatures.
Whew, doggy, that is yet another really good episode, but one that takes a certain mindset and attitude to enjoy to its fullest. But that's a discussion for another day. For now, though, we can say that this episode, titled Return to La Grunta, which kinda really undersells what happens in this story, has indeed been reviewed to death. A positively porpoise-sized thank you goes out to Hazel, Andrew M, and Obsidian Moonfox for being my $20 Patreons, whose money allows me to have ownership of more money. Wow, what a concept. Another thank you also has to go out to Undermined Crimp, Dominic O, Marsha B, Reign Supreme, Valerie Vomit, and Mr. Siegel 16. And of course, I do appreciate my $5 patrons and YouTube channel members who got access to this video a week early. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next review.
Anything else I can get you, gentlemen?
Bobby, don't let your father see you do that, honey.